following our phone-in segment on school resumption and safety concerns, we now turn to a deeper analysis of school security amid ongoing public concerns for students. Now, across Nigeria, parents and educators continue to express worries about the safety of children returning to classrooms. Despite government measures, including the deployment of trained security personnel, community guards, and safe school initiatives, challenges remain. Thousands of schools still lack basic protection infrastructure like fencing, CCTV, and fully trained security staff. In some areas, reliance on local vigilantes raises questions about the effectiveness of these safety measures. Now, to help us examine these issues, we're joined by two experts, Professor Yakubu Ochefu, Secretary General of the Committee of Vice Chancellors, who brings decades of experience in higher education and policy analysis. And we have Dr. Rasheedat Sadiq, Principal Associate at Quality Education Development Associates, a leading organization working on education, quality and child safety initiative. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Now, together, we'll explore the gaps in school security, the effectiveness of current government interventions, and practical steps to protect students while ensuring that education continues without disruption. Now, stay with us so that when we analyze the state of school safety in Nigeria in 2026 and what more needs to be done to reassure parents and communities. All right, thank you for joining us again. Let us start with you, Professor Yakubu Ochefu. Now, on this matter, when it comes to security and schools, we have seen how much insecurity has affected schools in Nigeria. Now, so far, what do you think needs to be done so that parents can feel safe enough and have that peace of mind in returning their children to school, and the children as well make sure that they have that peace and having that in an environment that they can learn as well?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, quick correction. I'm no longer the Secretary General of the Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities. I'm the National Chairman of the Association of Nigerian Universities Alumni, which is the umbrella body of all the Alumni Association of Nigerian Universities.
All right, thank you very much for that correction. We apologize.
Now, back to the point you've made. You've said it in the introduction that the security situation in our schools is far below what is expected. And it epitomizes the general security situation across Nigeria. We cannot isolate the fact that Nigerian citizens, wherever they are, at work, at home, when they are traveling, do not feel safe or do not have the type of security protection that is guaranteed. What makes our school situation particularly challenging is that when you take your children to school, you expect that they will be safe and secure. You expect that the environment that is being provided will be a safe and secure environment. It will be the last place you expect anything to happen to your kids. So that is what makes it particularly challenging. And where we are now, at the level of our primary schools, our secondary schools, and our universities, our colleges of education and polytechnics, I can tell you that the situation is very far from desired.
All right, now let's move to Dr. Rasheedat. You are someone that's trying to see, quality when it comes to education as well as child safety. And knowing that, how do you think that these factors that affect, the environment of the child affects them immensely when it comes to them learning?
Thank you very much. That is really, really a very interesting question, because in the education parlance, we say Maslow before Bloom. And for those of us that know about Maslow's hierarchy, safety and security, the basic needs, are right at the bottom. You cannot reach a child cognitively when that child is hungry, when that child is afraid. Those basic needs are not yet met. Even if the child is sitting down present, looking at you in the classroom, half of what you're saying is going over his head, the other half is going in one ear and coming out the other ear. So security, safety, basic needs are really essential before any meaningful learning can take place. So it is something that we need to look at collectively as a community, as a nation, to make sure that our learners, our children feel safe in school so that they can actually learn and use that knowledge to move the country forward.
Okay, I want to start with Dr. Rasheedat, because each time we talk about school safety, the federal government comes out to talk about the Safe School Initiative. But isn't it fair to say the Safe School Initiative exists more on paper than in reality? I'm bringing you this in because you know you have a vast knowledge when it comes to schools, and I don't know, maybe you have visited, you know, some few schools that you have seen the Safe School Initiative being present.
All right, thank you for that interesting question. And it's difficult to say, you know, what is fair and what is not. I think I want to commend the federal government for actually coming up with that initiative and at least taking steps. I would also want to say that I have not seen any school where the initiative is fully implemented, but I have seen some communities where they're taking things like fencing of the schools quite seriously, where they're involving the community, where they're including the vigilante. But honestly, we still have a lot to be done, and I think we need to find a way to put our money where our mouth is in regards to making sure that we can implement the Safe School Initiative effectively.
Over to my colleague.
All right, now let's go to you, Professor Yakubu Ochefu. When we talk about safety and security, a lot of people would say or would ask these questions: why are private schools, or why do they feel more secure than public schools, when public schools should have more leeway, more funds, you know, to be able to take care of the needful?
Yeah, first of all, you have to look at the numbers. And then you have to look at the investment that is made in terms of provisioning for security. Across the board, if you go to any school budget, security is not very prioritized. The welfare of the teachers, the learning environment, the laboratories and things like that, all of them take the chunk of the budgetary allocations for security, and security is more often than not treated as an afterthought. In the private universities, they know very well that parents will consider security a very important issue, and so they make the requisite investment. So if you go to a private school and you try to get your child out of that school without proper permission, you will go through a lot more hurdles, a lot more paperwork than you will in the public schools. So I think it all has to do with the allocation of funds and the prioritization of what should be the adequate security situation within the school environment, and the private schools take that a lot more seriously than the public schools.
All right, now, Dr. Rasheedat, moving to you, we've heard him say prioritizing what is important, especially when it comes to security or insecurity at this point. Now, looking at what has happened, we've seen abductions that have happened in schools. Now, how can the government make sure that this particular issue is put at the top of the list, making sure that it is seen through, that these safe school initiatives are put in place, making sure that children are safe in the environment of learning, and what we've seen happen not take place again?
Thank you very much. I think it's very much a thing about will. We have to be really willing to do things the way they should be done. So yes, we have the initiative. We've talked about funding and prioritization. They have to be willing to do that, to look at the bigger picture and see that these children are actually our future, and put that investment in their security and in their education. Another interesting and important thing would be about following up, monitoring. How much does the government actually monitor when some of these monies are released for different projects? I have heard somewhere on the grapevine that money was issued for fencing of a school, and the school was never fenced. Who is to blame? The person that stole the money, or the person that didn't supervise? Or so it's all of us.
So there's a question of accountability.
That is very important. We need to find a way to keep people accountable, because we can't keep funneling money and then nothing is done and private pockets are being lined. So it's very, very important to do that. Now, interestingly, in some of these cases, the school owners might not even necessarily spend, maybe not owners, those running the schools, the administrators, might not spend the money on personal needs, but you go to them and they say things around their labs are not well equipped, so instead of using the money for fencing, they bought chemicals for the learners to do chemistry experiments.
So are you telling me that at this point we have too many gaps in our school systems for us to be able to concentrate on a particular issue?
I don't believe that we can't concentrate on everything, because everything is important. And security is of utmost importance. The chemistry lab experiments are also equally important. This country is blessed with a lot of resources, not enough for all the things we need to do, but that comes back to the prioritization that Prof talked about. The education system, especially, forgive me, I would say basic education, even though we know that everything is important. But if we can get it right from the foundation, then even lifelong learning can continue. You can always go back to the university. You can always learn online. There are so many avenues. So we need to focus on protecting the learners at the basic education level, make sure that we follow through, we monitor, and then we do make sure that the involvement of the community is not just a lip service. Let the community buy in. Let them have that sense of ownership. In, of course, conjunction with the government. We can't say we're not going to do anything. Government, community, take the work. No, it's a combined effort, but we all need to be able to take ownership and stand firm and make sure that this thing is done right.
Okay, Prof, when we talk about school safety, I mean, most of the incidents that we've had concerning the kidnapping of those children mostly happened in public schools. And a lot of people would say that private schools are more safer than public schools. Is it right to say that, you know, the poor is being left at its own mercy when it comes to having access to education in a safe environment? Because, you know, parents will say, I think I'm more comfortable with my kids going to private schools. I don't care the amount I'm going to pay, but for the fact that they are safe, you know, it's a big one for me. So are we, you know, looking at, you know, parents concluding that, you know, if you're poor, your children's life is cheaper and your children's life is, you know, at the mercy of these criminals at the end of the day?
Now, we have to interrogate a very long history of decline of the public school system. Very long history. To the point that parents, or to put it more crudely, a commissioner of education of a state would rather send his child or his ward to a private school rather than the public school that he administers. So it epitomizes the entire lack of confidence in the public school system, even by those who have been designated to administer it. So as a parent, you are looking for the best for your kids. Are the teachers going to go on strike? Are the teachers well paid? Are the facilities there? And then, of course, to the one we are talking about now is the environment safe.
Absolutely.
When a parent puts all of that together and realizes that it's going to cost slightly more to put a child in a private school than a public school, because in the public school there are issue of strikes. In the public school, the teachers are not well motivated, so they do a lot of things on the side in order to survive. You know, the equipment are not there. The living environment is very poor. And then the supervision and monitoring is poor. And then, of course, the campus is so porous. You know, so the parents, as parents would normally do, wanting the best for their wards, will make that investment. So we normally will demand that a security ecosystem mapping of a school is undertaken. And when you truly map the security ecosystem of any school, public and private, you realize that the investment that is currently being made and the prioritization that is currently given to education, to security in our campuses is very, very minimal. a campus like University of Abuja, you know, over 7,000 hectares, you know, how are you going to police, how are you going to secure that environment effectively? The quantum of resources that is required to make that place very secure is huge. And so we need to rethink the entire mapping of the ecosystem, how it affects this bigger picture of providing an environment where it is safe, it is secure, and you know that you don't, if you took your child to a public school or a private school, it's the same type of standards and settings that you will get. In some states where they have made the requisite investment, parents have moved their children from private schools back to public schools because ultimately the parent is looking for the best environment for teaching and learning of his ward.
All right. Now, Dr. Rasheedat, piggybacking on what our professor said, looking at the sheer size, I would say, or landmass of public schools, they're usually huge, they're usually big, and a lot of people, some Nigerians might say that it is a waste of space. A smaller area can be used for these public schools. And aside from that, when it came to complaints about security, a lot are saying that these public schools or these schools that are at the outskirts of towns should be brought closer to town so that at least that would help when it comes to security. What's your take on this?
Okay, so I think I'll start from the land mass, especially with regards to higher institutions. It is not a waste of space. I've been fortunate to visit some universities outside the country, and just last year I went to one, and the landmass was massive. But it wasn't left
compared to infrastructure.
Exactly, and that's where I'm going. So what can we do to utilize that land the way it was planned when the land was allocated? Why doesn't University of Abuja, for example, have different working semi-commercial units that the learners, the students are learning from, and they're making income from? Because I believe that's sort of the outlook that we're going to have, apart from the teaching hospital that's probably the only one that functions in every university. The university has a department of agriculture. Why aren't we having a working farm that is selling produce? The university has a department of art, department of this and that. Every department should have a functional commercial unit beside it. So by the time all of this starts to happen and the investment in infrastructure and other things are happening, you find out that the space is just right. So, but in the interim, maybe we can decide to cordon off some sections. So some of the landmass is unused. We leave that side and fence in the one that is populated and used, so that the bigger part of the university still remains as we plan to utilize it effectively. But then we're able to fence off in cordons that would then be easier to man and to secure. That is regarding the landmass. I think the second question...
So before you get there, in regards to secondary schools, we have a lot of secondary schools that do have, very large landmass.
Thank you very much. And I would use my secondary school as an example. I attended FGC Oyo, and it was a huge school. But it was good for us because we were boarders. We were in that environment most of the time of the year. Sometimes I visit some private boarding schools now, and I wonder, where do these learners have to do exercise? Where do they are constrained? I feel a sense of claustrophobia attending some of those schools. The entire school is just a block. Your admin block is here, your teaching block is here, your hostel is here, your dining, like everything is just so. But that's it's just proximity. But in our own boarding schools, we had to walk a certain distance to dining. It was exercise, it was exploring nature. And then just like with the universities, we had a school farm, we had staff quarters, we had staff school, we had different aspects. We had a library that was a way off, we had a dining, all of that. So the areas were still relatively utilized. They were really huge, but I felt they were really helpful. We had a whole sports arena. So maybe we might think of more effectively, just using the cordoning system also to protect the hostel area more than some of the other areas. But for me, I enjoyed being in such a liberating environment and having that landmass when I was in school.
All right, so speaking of, schools being brought closer to, the cities and making sure that maybe that would help out in security matters.
That might help out in security matters, but my concern now is what about those learners in those environments? Some people don't have the money to transport themselves to and from school every day. And then that transportation in itself is also a security risk. Moving to and from schools that are farther away, the learners come in tired. We need to find a way to secure our environment. Every child has the right to safe education in their areas. We should do work on that.
Now, Professor, do you honestly think that, if top politicians, if top government officials have their children in public schools today, we won't be talking or discussing about the insecurity issues that we have facing public schools in Nigeria?
It's a catch-22 situation, actually. Catch-22 in the sense that where we are now in terms of security in Nigeria, it's an all-commerce game. It's the free hand in which the bad guys have been roaming around. They can get to anybody almost as it were.
No, regardless of
your status or your location and things like that. It has been demonstrated over and over again. But I think the conversation should be around how do we design an effective and efficient, especially in terms of costs, security environment for our schools. And it is in that regard that we keep advising that the requisite investments that should be made in security technologies, that have over the years proven very efficient, were not being done. So you have University of Abuja. They've done a huge fencing of Abuja. I'm not a big fan of fencing because I know how easy it is to climb a fence. I know how easy it is to pull down a fence. So the type of technologies that are emerging are the ones that you're using laser to ring fence your campuses. You are using eye-in-the-sky technology to map the entire environment, not just one CCTV camera here and there, but you have a big eye in the sky that maps your entire environment. You have motion detectors, you have the technologies that alert people to security people to say move quickly to this location or move to that location. So it's so that requisite investment in security technologies. We've been advising at the level of our schools, at the level of our farms. Should be the type of conversation that we'll be having, because at that point, response time can be quickly activated, and if the bad guys know that the moment they come into a particular environment, they are already being mapped, they move their business elsewhere because they don't want to get part of their rule book is that they don't want to get caught in any operation. But if they know that if they move to this location and they can abduct 300 children and then trek 2-3 hours in the bush before everybody even realizes that the children are gone, they will keep on doing that type of thing.
So, Dr. Rasheedat, what's your take on this? Do you think that, if these public schools are being attended by top politicians, do you think the case will be different when it comes to, tackling the insecurity issues that we have facing our schools?
This is interesting because it's an if. It's an if question, and if questions are so difficult, because then I would just start thinking of why are they not having their children in the schools in the first place, and it's not a security reason. It's not a security reason. Yeah. So the roundabout is going to be a bit much. So I think I would just want to, leaning on what he said about having systems, and just mention the issue of drills. How are we? Because this is a reality, unfortunately, that we're now facing.
Sure.
How do we actually prepare the teachers, the learners for that if scenario? What do we do if we are attacked on the school? What is the plan? What is the security and safety plan? Do we have drills? It's sad that even as simple as fire drills, they are rare in Nigeria schools. But now we have to look at other drills, security drills, lockdown drills. Is there a way we can actually lock down the schools that even if the bad guys, I like the word he's using, the perpetrators are in the area, they cannot get access to the schools, to the learners that quickly, and the security apparatus can be alerted, and then they flee. But because everywhere is so porous, everywhere is so open, we haven't done enough planning around what to do. And this is already a situation that has been in the country for a while. I think we should have moved into having those action plans and drills that the learners and everybody can easily do, so that panic is reduced. It's not easy. The real thing is always different from a drill, but at least you have a sense of, okay, I have an idea of what to do in an emergency situation.
Absolutely. Now, Professor, speaking of, ways in making sure that at least we can do our best in trying as much as possible in keeping these students or children safe, what low-cost security innovations can schools adopt immediately, since we've seen that so far not a lot of states have put in place these safer school initiatives to roll on?
Yeah. Let me first pose the question, and maybe Rasheedat can help. How much of security education do we have in our curriculum? How much of it? And just like I said, even drills are not there. We have not prioritized security education, the awareness. If you ask a Nigerian to describe somebody that he saw in a crime scene, they will go on and on and on, and a sketch artist will probably not be able to put anything together. It's just like asking a Nigerian for direction. You say, I'm going to trust this thing. You go like this, go like this, go like this. These are all part of the education. How many times do primary schools or secondary schools take their kids to go and visit the police station to understand what the police do? You take them to the airport, you take them to the National Assembly, but you never take them to the police station because you don't consider that as an important part of their education. So I think we must start with some of those fundamentals to see how we can tweak aspects of our curriculum to put a substantial dose of security education. And at that point, you can now look at the security ecosystem mapping of your environment. Where are the threats? Where are the gaps? Where are the things? And then you sit down together with all the stakeholders, the parents, the teachers, the alumni of the institutions, and then of course government and the security agencies, and say, okay, what is low cost? What can we do at this level? Where are the pinpoints? Where are the likely attacks going to come from, and stuff like that? All that, if you map it and synchronize it, you will now be able to say, okay, because you cannot treat it as a one system, one size fits all. If the school is in an urban center, it has its challenges. If it's in a rural center, it has its challenges. If it's in a local government headquarters where response time is there, it has its own challenge. So all of that has to be mapped case by case to be able to design something that works for each school.
Now, Dr. Rasheedat, we know on one end we have the schools, we have the federal government or the state government in ensuring that these children are safe in their schools. What can parents do in making sure that they create awareness in their children and understanding that when things happen, this is the way you need to go? How can they make sure that their child is aware?
Thank you very much. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's about building awareness. And similar to what he has said, we cannot leave the security education to just the schools. The schools need to do more, as he has mentioned. But as parents, we also need to have it into our daily routines. And I know a lot of us growing up heard things like, don't talk to strangers, don't accept gifts from strangers. But rather than having it as a fairy tale, that somebody that accepted food from a stranger was carried away, we need to do more. And I think we need to also institute these drills even in our homes. Because just like he also mentioned, this insecurity is no longer limited to a particular area. So parents, and I think it's even good coming from parents, because there's that less sense of fear. It's coming from a sense of, don't worry, I'm here for you, we'll be here together, but this is possible and this is what you should do if it happens. I know we have parents that already have like codes for their children that I'm not going to send anyone to pick you, but if I do, there's a family code. So this is what we do. You ask them, what's this password or what's the secret word? And if they don't know it, you're not going with them, or things like that. And then even things around teaching emergency numbers to the children. So what is our emergency number? If there's an emergency, what do you do? Or who do you call? Apart from reaching out to the emergency services, who is our, should I say, next of kin, that you know that this is the person in our family that if there's a health issue, security issue, maybe the neighbor, maybe your uncle, whoever, but having those plans also I think is also something that as families we need to start investing in. Let's do the mapping of our own homes. Where are the possible access areas? Where can insecurity come from? Let's start to tell our children that yes, we are friendly with the help, the domestic help, but we also need to draw boundaries. You need to know that this person is not your auntie, this person is here to work, and you give her a respectable name. Call them by their name, Miss something, Mr. whoever. Let them know they're not your family. Let them know, even though we are interacting as a family, we're not discriminating. But all of those are the possible areas of security risk that the children have to be aware of. And you know, some parents already do it. They know that if they have a driver taking their child, it's not just the driver, there's a trusted person with the driver. So you start to inform the children about this. Don't go anywhere alone with so-and-so person. And even in your school, if they want to take you anywhere, ask them to call me. Because some of the schools also take with levity the concept of consent from parents before you take the learners out. And I'm not sure I want to blame them totally, because I've worked in a school where we were calling the parents to say, oh, we have this event that came up, we want to take the learners. Oh, they are your children, they are in your care, anything, it doesn't matter. Like, okay, but we need to make sure that we seek consent. Because if something does happen, they won't remember that they said they are now in your care. So, but these are things that as Nigerians, sometimes we don't take that important. It's important to have the consent of the parent before taking the child anywhere. And sometimes, should I say sometimes, all the time, as much as possible, a written and signed consent, because things can happen, and then you want to be able to say that you've taken the best preventive measures that you could. So parents do have a lot of work to do, and we can start as early as 2 years old, just not scaring them, just giving them the basic security tips, and then as they grow older we can give them the bigger ramifications and let them see the picture.
Now, Professor, looking at security issues, we understand that the parents have to make sure that these children are aware of what is going on around them. So what do we do about children that are from preteens and adolescents as well? How can you make sure they understand? Because I believe those are stages where they become more stubborn and they refuse to sometimes take the word of the parents or take lessons from their parents. Or how can we make sure that they understand that these are realities that we're facing now?
Yeah, I mean, child psychologists will tell you that when you get to that age of exploration of the world around you, 14, 15 upwards, you have children, your children who think they've already arrived, they know everything, you know, and they're going to, naturally, it comes to them naturally, it's part of the evolving process. And I think, again, the education that you give to them is different from the ones that you give to their younger kids. This is the time to get them to go on an excursion to prisons. This is the time for them to go on an excursion to mental health facilities. This is the time for them to go on it. So the setting you designed for them so that they can see some of these things themselves, not just hearing from you. You know, this is time for them to have conversations with people who have been into a dark path and survived, and they are giving them testimonies. You know, so it's more of conversation and learning by experiencing or by attending to some of those environments or going to those environments to see for themselves, rather than sit down and give them instructions and push them and tell them, don't do this, don't do that. Because if you say, don't do this, definitely,
I think that's why
will I not do this? I want to go and experiment it and let me see for myself. That's where it comes from. So you tell them, don't do this. If you do this, this is the implication. And take them to see the implication for themselves. And then at that point, you know, and then of course, getting their peer group and their peer leader to also be part of that conversation, because this is an age whereby the peer group and the leader of that peer group exerts a lot of influence over them. And so it's not just talking to your child alone, your son or your daughter, but also her friends and the group which they circulate, because at that point that group cohesion is very, very important to them, and so you must take education to that level as well.
All right, now before we go, I'd like to hear both takes. At this point, what do you think should be done, or what has the government, should I say, forgotten about, or what have they not done making sure that these things don't happen again? What steps should they take in making sure that schools still stay or should stay secure? Doctor, let's start with you.
All right, thank you very much. The government has done some things, but I think what I would want them to do more is on the area of accountability and funding. I think they need to really sit with the different stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, just like Prof mentioned, what is required in the rural setting would be different from what is required in the urban setting. And I think we're looking at it as too much of a wholesale thing. So the government needs to sit down with those different stakeholders, be willing to really put in the funding and to make sure that whoever is left to administer these initiatives is made accountable. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to hear from you, Professor.
Yeah, for me, we'll raise the bar a bit higher in the sense that I have always advocated that at this point in our national development, 21st century, we need to rethink the philosophy of education and the role it plays in a changing, developmental, digital, knowledge-driven society like ours. We need to rethink the entire educational philosophy, because we started by saying security is a big issue, but as far as the priorities are concerned, it is not there in the hierarchy of needs when you are budgeting for education. So it becomes a funding issue. Is the funding adequate? Funding to education adequate? No, it is not adequate. Are the governance environments of our institutions of learning adequate? They are largely obsolete as far as I'm concerned in so many areas, you know. So are the relationship between the stakeholders cohesive? You will see the unions going one direction, the parents going one direction, the proprietors going one direction, federal, state, local governments, all of them have all manner of thoughts as far as the education is concerned. So we really need to come to a consultative assembly. All the stakeholders come down together, not a 1, 2, 3 day workshop, but a serious, deep thinking setting whereby we'll say, okay, let us reset our educational philosophy and what it should do for us as a developing nation going forward for the rest of this century.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Yakubu Ochefu, National President, Nigerian Universities Alumni Association.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Dr. Rasheedat Sadiq, Principal Associate at Quality Education Development Associates. Thank you very much for sharing so much right here.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
For coming.
Thank you.